All right, little chit chat. I'll just start anyway. There's no formal introduction here. But my name is Alexander Spannuth. I'm a regional fire ecologist with the U.S. Forest Service. I'm currently filling in for Jake Nuttall, the regional fire director. He got pulled away to a budget meeting in these tumultuous times, as you might expect. So as of about 5 o'clock last night, I figured I was filling in for him. So I might be reading from some slides. I apologize for that, but the title of the session is Prescribed Fire Use kind of Case Study. And what I'm going to be presenting on is more of a fuels treatment effectiveness with the utilization of prescribed fire and wildfire within the 2022 Black Fire, which is in the Gila National Forest in New Mexico. This research was primarily done by Dr. Gavin Jones at our Rocky Mountain Research Station, along with myself and Angela out of the regional office, and Matt Hertow out of the University of New Mexico. And it's currently out for publication, so you get to see it before it hits the streets. And why this is important in a WUI Summit, or why I thought it would be appropriate, is as fires, as we know and just saw in the plenary speaker, are more commonly moving from remote terrain into the WUI. These fires, as everyone in this room knows, are fairly complex and require some really solid operational tactics and decisions, as the fire will tend to grow quite rapidly within this remote terrain, isn't easily suppressed, and then moves into the wildland and urban interface with a larger perimeter and larger scales. So here on the left, I just pulled this up last night. You can see all those black polygons that represent kind of the city of Tucson and infrastructures. Those are all individual building polygons that represent like actual structures. And then you can see within the Catalinas and Saguaro National Park and down to the south, Mount Wrightston, I believe. You can see the fire history on U.S. Forest Service lands. And this is going back to 1910, I believe, but most of these are contemporary within the last 20 years. So you can see how the size of these fires, especially the more recent ones, are quite large and butt up right against the wildland urban interface. So one of the common things that we know as firefighters, a lot of people in this room, is that like landscape scale prescribed fire, especially in timber, most of this will focus on timber areas, and fire treatments within these remote areas can reduce fire severity overall and improve operational decision space. More time, less severity, gives more tools in the toolbox for suppression before it gets into the wildland urban interface. So here's the scale of the 2022 Black Fire on the Gila National Forest. Was anyone in this room on this fire? Here. Oh, awesome. So if you have any input, please let me know in this presentation afterwards. So this was a large fire. You can see the perimeter is noticeable on a state level scale. So it's the second largest fire in New Mexico history. It happened under red flag conditions. And I pulled up the weather report generally for this fire as it progressed. Like temps at the higher elevations were 81 to 85. Winds were gusting up to 40 from the southwest throughout for most of the fire. And RHs were averaging around 7 to 11%. So red flag conditions, pretty dry. There were days observed where the RH was down to 2 to 5%, which I haven't seen something that dry since I was working down here detailing with Tucson Helitack. It's super dry. So what we wanted to see is, like, given the extreme conditions, weather conditions, and the extensive treatment history, we wanted to see why the Black Fire burned in a surprisingly very desirable way for forest restoration, and predominantly low severity. But why was that? It definitely wasn't the weather, that's for sure. So when we look at the Black Fire perimeter, here on the left, you can see the burn severity map color-coded there. And you can see that the majority of the footprint burned in very low to low severity with large pockets of previous treatments outlined with the blue hash marks, where the majority of the high severity fire was outside of these treatment polygons. And kind of quickly by the numbers, we can see the black fire was 131,000 hectares, and burn severity, 82% of it roughly was in very low to low severity. Kind of conversely, only 18% was high severity. And within that footprint, there was just a little over 19,000 acres or hectares, excuse me, since it's in publication, it's all in hectares, which makes sense. And then just under 79,000 hectares of previous wildfire within the Gila. So that's equating to about 50% of the landscape treated. So question one for this publication is what factors explained landscape scale patterns of burn severity? And was it the previous treatments, the fuel type, the different weather indices like RH, drought index, climatic water deficit, air temperature, winds, et cetera, that we're used to using as firefighters? When we wanted to see which ones kind of floated up on top. So on a landscape scale analysis, how Dr. Gavin Jones did this is he took this entire fire perimeter, made little mini landscapes at different scales, and kind of assessed the fire severity within those little mini pockets. And he also did it at different spatial resolutions within those little circles. So the outer one is 4,000 meters in diameter. The second in is 2,000 meters in diameter. Third, 1,000, and then the last one is 500 meters in diameter. So you can see if there's any scale dependence for which one of those variables really drove fire severity for the black fire. And he threw that into a random forest model, which you guys are familiar with modeling. It's a recursive binary splitting technique, and one of the benefits of this model is you can see variable mean importance. So you can see which one of these geospatial variables were the most important in explaining high severity fire. And this is just for the high severity portion of the black fire. And kind of to reinforce our hypothesis, we're pretty stoked on this, is that previous treatments popped out way on top of the most important variable for predicting high severity fire, even more than other things, way more than other things, which was kind of surprising to me, including things we're commonly used to, like weather variables, RH, drought, air temperature was way down there, and winds, right? So when we look at that weather forecast that I kind of gave you at the beginning of this, those were less important than the amount of area that was previously treated, this landscape scale. So, and this is just a model performance. You can see that the model gets better, and that importance of previous treatments increases as you go up in scale. And the out-of-bag error is just a metric saying this model was really good and worthy of publication. So we wanted to dive in a little further and say, how did these previous treatments impact high severity? And this is just strictly high severity. You can see the proportion of high severity on the y-axis and proportion of area treated on the x-axis. And there's an obvious decrease as you go from less area treated to more area treated, proportion of high severity. So overall, high severity burned area decreased by an average of 51% as the proportion of area treated went from 0 to 1. So if you have 0% of your landscape treated compared to 100% of your landscape treated, you're going to see a reduction of 51% of high severity fire. And then the other thing, which I thought was really important for management, especially in the Forest Service at landscape scales, is this threshold, right? You can see that kind of threshold based on scale and where it really starts to significantly drop. And these thresholds were between roughly 40 to 60% depending on scale. So if you want to see some return on your investment for these landscape scale treatments and these large prescribed fires or wildland fire use, utilizing previous wildfires in your landscape, it doesn't become incredibly effective until you reach about 40 to 60% of your landscape when you're looking at these big, large landscape scale fires in these remote areas. And then to add a little bit more on this, we also did the same process with moderate and high severity fire. So excluding just only the low and very low, because the moderate and high severity is what's obviously the hardest to suppress. And once again, looking at the variable importance, and was able to predict the amount of moderate and high severity fire effects. Previous treatments, once again, popped out on top above, vegetation, fuels variables, and weather variables as well. But we start to see those gaps kind of close a little bit more as we go down in the burn severity scale. But that's showing that previous treatments really did the best job at reducing severity. And once again, the model performance, it all did really well. So within the moderate and high severity burns, we can kind of get those same percentages and thresholds. So moderate to high severity area burn decreased by an average of 35% as area of treated went from 0 to 1. And the threshold is roughly the same, 40 to 60% depending on the scale. So if you want to reduce moderate and high severity fire within your WUI area, especially in these big cities like Tucson where you have a lot of WUI perimeter, you really need to treat 40 to 60% of your landscape to reduce that severity. And the second question, once we got through this data, is what happened to burn severity when fire encountered a previous treated area? So the idea here is as the fire progresses, you have a flaming front, right? Like the head of the fire moving in a particular direction. You can see how the fire behavior reacted before it got into the treatment and as it goes into the treatment. And the methods for this were taken from a paper in California from Leiderson et al., I believe in 2017. And you segment out certain point transects. There's a control transect, which is outside of a treatment area, and a treatment transect, which starts outside of a treatment and ends within the treatment. So you can see that graphic here where the control areas are randomly placed outside of a treatment area. We did this using the progression map, by the way, the fire progression map. And use these as a control, and as the fire comes into a treated area, you can see how the fire behavior was before it got into the treatment and then what happened after it got into the treatment. So we segmented these out based on fire severity. You can see the RD and BR continuous data on the left-hand side, which is a metric of burn severity, and then the different burn severity categories up on top. And the way this works is you can see the rough box plot for the control transects before they hit the treatments. And then when we get into the blue treatment areas, you can see this is what happened, the burn severity before it hit the treatment and how it decreased once it hit the treatment. So that was a 55% decrease in high severity fire once that fire encountered these treatments, which since this is on a continuous scale, like, for the fire folks in the room, like, does an RD and BR of 100 versus 300 mean anything to you guys? Maybe, maybe not, probably not. But the way I like to look at it from more of an operational standpoint is it dropped the fire severity kind of by one category. So you can see once the fire hit the treatment, it kind of matched the control within the moderate. So, you know, when the fire is burning at high severity, goes into a treatment, it's going to reduce into more of a moderate severity category, which is not stand replacing, right? And we kind of see that same pattern evolve as we go into moderate, where, you know, it starts off here on the controls, hits the treatment, and decreases down to something that's more in the low level, not really affecting your mid-story forest structure. And once you're in the low, it obviously just kind of stays there. So makes sense. There's not much further to go down if you have an understory fire. And that was a 21% decrease in the RD&BR scale. So to kind of wrap up, this might be the shortest presentation you see this week, or at least today. Question 1, what factors explain landscape scale patterns of burn severity? So the extent of the high severity was best predicted by the amount of area previously treated, even more than weather variables, fuels variables, things like that. Once 40 to 60% of the landscape was treated, high severity fire was drastically reduced. And treated area was more important than weather in predicting high severity fire, even though the black fire occurred under red flag conditions. Another thing, talking with my boss, who was the fire behavior analyst on that fire for quite some time, those treatments gave them the operational opportunity to mitigate fire effects across this valuable landscape and do things like night ops and contain the fire on the southern and northern perimeter lines. So those treatments were effective at reducing severity with the knowledge and expertise of the team and the operations folks that were actually on that fire. And then question 2, what happened to burn severity when the fire encountered a treated area? Regardless of the initial conditions, burn severity always decreased when it encountered a fire area or a treated area. And once again, it dropped usually by one severity category once it entered the treated area. Burn severity was reduced by 21 to 55% based on that RD&BR scale. And then here's just a quick visual comparison, since this is a New Mexico fire. So here's the black fire on the left and the Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon fire on the right. With that burn severity, you can see the drastic difference in the amount of high severity fire. And let's see, got previous fires. This is where the animations come in. You can see the previous fire footprints within the black fire perimeter due to the awesome management the Gila National Forest has compared to the perimeter of the Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon. So if we really want to do a true comparison of how important treatments are, this would be a really good case study of what happens in a landscape scale fire that is heavily treated with previous prescribed fire and wildfire versus an area that hasn't seen a lot. So yeah, there's a lot of them. And with that, that's the end of this research presentation. Sorry Jake couldn't be here. Hopefully that was engaging and interesting to you to a certain degree on the effectiveness of prescribed fire and wildfire, reducing burn severity at landscape scales. And yeah, thanks for letting me take up 22 minutes of your time. Yeah, go ahead.
As a non-firefighter, I would like some clarification to what type of treatment you're talking about. You say treated area.
Yeah, so previously treated areas, there were kind of like 3 different categories that we saw within this. When I was pulling the treatment data, you have previous prescribed fires, and this is going from 2000 to 2021. So about 20 years of prescribed fire, wildfire, and wildfire for resource benefit there was no mechanical treatments within that perimeter. Most of it is a wilderness area. So go ahead, we got one over there, and then.
Yeah, I have two questions. So when were those areas treated last? Like how recent were a lot of those treatment areas?
Oh yeah, so, I forgot, I was requested to paraphrase the question into the mic. So, so how recent were a lot of the treatments, right? So the data that I pulled for the treatment data was from our FACTS database, which is the U.S. Forest Service Institutional Treatment Database, geospatially. And I pulled all the treatments going back from 2000 until the year before the fire in 2021. So that's due to a couple reasons. One, that the FACTS database is pretty hit or miss before the year 2000. That's when GIS was just coming up, and like a shapefile was a new scary thing to people, especially fire folks. And then two, fuels treatment longevity and effectiveness is usually around that 20-year mark for prescribed fire. So it was kind of a duality there to use that 2000 to 2021 timeframe. Yeah, so were any of these treatments in the wilderness areas? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's where they have NEPA to do prescribed fire, you can do fire use, and the wildfire treatments, obviously, are an active nature. So, and then one in the back, and then we'll go. Okay, cool. Thanks.
I was just curious, what was like the vegetation type? Is it grass? Is it like shrub? Is it tree? Without.
Oh yeah, and that's a great question, and something that I want to add to this analysis is vegetation type, and then also vegetation density as well. But since it's such a landscape scale, it covers a variety of different vegetation types, or in the fire world, field types. So there's riparian areas, along the bottom of the drainages, PJ and grasslands down low, and primarily ponderosa pine at the higher elevations. So you get a good mix of kind of a lot of different forest types that inhabit the Southwest. Okay, yeah.
Did any of that fire get impacted by grazing on people? I know they do grazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that I don't know. I would imagine it did to a certain degree, especially for things like, rate of spread, flame length. But grazing is something that we've talked about quite a bit in the Forest Service, and targeted grazing and like how that actually reduces fire severity, but actually tracking that data geospatially for a case study like this is almost impossible unless, you can track individual cows, I guess, with the GPS collar. You guys may have more insight than that on me. I'm not a range guy. So. Okay, any other questions, any input from the dude who's actually on the fire?
No, you described it just the way it was. It was just, I didn't realize it was treated before and had all those fires before, but it did give the team enough chance to get in front of it and prep it and put all the hose lay in front, and we just let it basically did its thing. We were there at the end of May, beginning of June, so it had been burning a while, just like you said. So
Cool.
that makes sense. The severity wasn't great until maybe we would put fire on the ground, and that's when you see the severity.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that this presentation doesn't have and is really hard to track is also the human influence. So there's a lot of, when you drop a bunch of PSD balls, really quickly, that can really ramp up severity. And a lot of the large scale fires I've seen, most of the severity is due to us making actions a lot of times, firing ops, stuff like that. So that's really cool.
Do you have more of a public-facing storytelling based on this? I just think it's an important thing to show that we're not necessarily stopping fire, right? Because that particular fire almost overtook Mesquite Cap Canyon in terms of size. So that was the kind of fire year we were going to have, right? And that's been something I've discussed
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to paraphrase real quick. So this is good information to have, and is there a distilled, more digestible avenue for communication based on that fire year, the extreme weather that we were seeing, that can be used for public communication? And the only thing we have in the works right now is a publication, I think with the Journal of Ecology. So nothing like a story map is being built right now. We've given a couple presentations on this data, mostly to professionals like yourselves. But the publication, if it gets accepted, it's under review right now with our revisions, is the only thing that we have in the works. But if you want to talk to Dr. Gavin Jones at the Rocky Mountain Research Center, he might be excited to make that more publicly available.
What occurred in 2022, basically in New Mexico. Just, I think that that would be an important thing to share. So if there is a way, or if they need some assistance in doing something like that, I think our Southwest information prevention, we do all this public-facing communication. We'd be super interested in seeing something like that told in a way that people could sort of, explore that themselves and see how the severity and the treatments versus not.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's chat offline, and then I can get you the information into Gavin Jones, and maybe set that up for a future project, if that works. So yeah, come find me. I'll be the tall guy. So, yeah.
So, given that there's no mechanical treatments, but there's been I feel like there's been a big ramp up in the last 5 to 10 years of mechanical and prescribed treatments. Are there any similar examples of this, but with more mechanical treatment involved? I think there's a lot of money being spent on that.
Yeah, great question. So there have been a number of landscape scale fires and fuels treatment effectiveness with different types of treatments is really heavily being explored, especially in academia right now. There's a variety of publications that span the western U.S. from particularly up in my neck of the woods, up in like the Fry country above the Mogollon Rim, through Colorado and California up into the Pac Northwest. So that has been discussed quite a bit. But for the kind of the Southwest and especially Tucson with more herbaceous and fine fuels, I really don't know a lot for that sort of mechanical treatment, how effective it is. I know Alan Sinclair, who's going to be at one of the stops on the field trip, as you guys know, is an expert in that field. Personally, from what I've seen, mechanical treatments in ponderosa pine, due to the reduction in density, can drop it to the floor. But if there is a lot of slash, it could also increase severity because you have so much dead and down fuel. So it needs to be cleaned up afterward. Cool, sounds good. With that, I feel like I've talked at you guys enough. Thanks again for your attention. And it looks like we have another half hour before the next session starts. So I got permission from Megan to set you guys free and meet back up and go to your next session, wherever that may be. So thanks again, guys.
All right, let's go for it. Good morning, everyone. My name is John Goraj. I'm the Southern Arizona Program Coordinator with the National Forest Foundation. And today we're going to do a couple things. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of some of the work we've been doing down here on the WUI, on the Santa Catalina Mountains. And we have our partners here, awesome partners that I work closely with, and we're going to have a panel discussion in about 10 or 15 minutes. A little bit about the NFF. NFF was chartered by Congress in 1993 with a really simple and direct mission of enhancing and restoring our national forests and grasslands. Our goal really at the end of the day is to bring new resources in the form of funding to the table and to increase local restoration capacity. We do this in a couple different ways, working with on-the-ground nonprofits via grants or with local contractors for projects with technical requirements. And the Santa Catalina Invasive project is a great example of the latter part of that. Does anyone here not know what bufflegrass is? Oh, I was hoping there'd be like one. I'm so jealous. Okay. I am extremely jealous of you. I'll take just a 30-second detour to talk about it. It's a South African grass brought over here about 100 years ago for cattle forage, for erosion control. For a while, it was not doing the infestation sort of piece that it's doing now, but it really started ramping up in the 1990s, covering large swaths of the desert and really starting to disturb the Sonoran Desert ecology. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, the treatment for it, some of the challenges and the successes of it. Bufflegrass treatment is really hard, and the management is really hard. There's just no way to, there's nothing cutesy about it, nothing sexy about it. It's a really difficult task from a treatment perspective and from a management perspective. The terrain is complex and steep. The temps when treatment is underway is often 95 to 105 degrees Fahrenheit. The herbicide spills, the plant community shift, the list kind of goes on. And so this is why partnership in this realm is extremely important. It's a difficult and lonely endeavor, and working together closely with people is just extremely important. The implications for the WUI in this bioregion, at the top of the list for me always is potential loss of our keystone species, the saguaro. The saguaro is an integral part of the Sonoran Desert. The countless animals depend on it, and it affects plant communities in a lot of different ways, positive ways. Bufflegrass is a major fire risk, and really, on the next slide, I'm going to talk about the bighorn fire for a moment, but that was when these projects, the treatment for it, transformed, in my opinion, from more than just like pure ecological restoration project to really at the end of the day, what I would call fuels reduction project. Bufflegrass creates connectivity in the desert and otherwise sparse vegetation type, potentially irreparable changes to the Sonoran Desert ecology. And these last two are something that managers and contractors have been focusing on a lot. The effects to property values on the WUI and the effects to tourism and hospitality. This is the bighorn fire of 2020. This was an extremely close to home example of what bufflegrass can do in this plant community type in the Sonoran Desert. 120,000 acres, as you can see, extremely close to homes. Couldn't be any more on the WUI there. And again, I think that this is a pivotal sort of turning point when this became no longer just restoration projects, but really fuels reduction projects. This is just an overview of treatment in the Santa Catalinas over the past year. It goes back much farther than that, spearheaded really by Christina Pearson, who's up here from the Forest Service, who's been engaged in this work for a long time. The NFF joined the Forest Service on this project in about 2020. In the last year alone, we got 755 acres treated. We have 5 distinct treatment units. We have Sabino Upland, which is the sort of the canyon sides, the slopes of Sabino Canyon, much beloved canyon here in Tucson. We have the Sabino riparian area, which is really just the drainage. We have Bear Canyon, which is just a little southeast of Sabino Canyon. There's a beautiful hike that goes to Seven Falls area from Bear Canyon. And then we have Finger Rock in the Cobblestone unit. And those are the two that I'm really going to focus on today because, as you'll see, they're really, really right on the WUI. Homes are right next to where these units are. Spent about $1 million in treatment just in the last year for bufflegrass, which is highlighting that these costs are really starting to skyrocket, which is one of the other things going back to that slide that I had before, just simply stating that bufflegrass treatment is really hard, the management is really hard. These costs are going way up. So Finger Rock Canyon, again, just continuing the work that the Forest Service has been doing in this area. I got onto the scene for this treatment unit at the end of 2022. This unit highlights a lot of great partnerships right out of the bat. We have a lot of folks from the DFFM here today, Arizona Department of Fire and Forestry Management. They've given so far about $300,000 into this unit, which is we're really grateful for. Game and Fish also has put money into this unit, about $35,000. So really a lot of, that goes back to that original slide I was talking about with bringing local restoration, increasing that capacity, bringing other folks to the table. And so we're really grateful for our non-federal partners as well. So in 2023, we had not a great green up. And when I'm talking about green up, I mean, in order for buffalo grass to really thrive, it has to have that green up. Usually more predictably comes in the summer monsoonal rains. We had some precip in that area over in the 2023, but it was sort of concentrated in the drainages and sub-drainage of this really complex canyon. So that's what we focused on. We were able to get 108 acres done that summer. And then we got really lucky, which leads me into the other treatment season, which is potentially can be the spring treatment. If we get nice rains down here in Tucson during the winter, upwards to 5 inches or more, we can have a nice short window to treat in the spring, which is much more preferable for contractors. It's not 105 degrees out. It really opens up an opportunity to get some good treatment done and not have so many other sort of intense factors affecting it. So we got super lucky with Finger Rock Canyon. We were able to get our contractor out there, Rocky Mountain Ecology, who's based in New Mexico, and they brought some really large crews to the table. It's about 24 people moving through this canyon, and they hit it really hard. And those back-to-back treatments like that, if the phenology and if the climate and the precip are all sort of meet up to do this, is really helpful. So we got to treat in the same area twice in a relatively short amount of time. This made a large difference. Finger Rock just couldn't be any more on the WUI. This is a photo of right when you walk into it. There's homes right there. Just a critical area for protecting property values, tourism, and hospitality. This photo was taken on July 19th, 2024. This was a happy day for me and my colleague Kim Franklin from the Des Museum. This was after 2 treatments in this area. This area that you're seeing on here is about 1.5 miles into the canyon. It's about 500 to 1,000 buffalo grass plants, so it was a good area for me to go and check up regularly to see what was going on. At this point in July of 24, we had already had 2 or 3 inches of rain in this canyon, so normally we'd see a lot of buffalo grass green up, but because of those back-to-back treatments, we're seeing a lot of dead buffalo grass. You see a lot of happy native plants, you see a lot of green, and that yellow tannish color that you're seeing is all dead buffalo grass. So this was a win in my book. This was taken after the summer 2023 treatment. Little patch here, but showing that the native plants are coming up underneath, and this is exactly what I want to see is 6 months, 9 months after is this type of effectiveness. Jumping into the cobblestone unit, so again, just highlighting the significance of partnership. This was a great success story in the fact that Tucson Audubon was able to jump into treatment right away in summer 2022. The HOA that this land is adjacent to actually got involved and put some funds into this project, which is a great success, and we hope to see more of that HOA involvement. And just Tucson Audubon has a high investment in this project. They actually got grant funds from Wildlife Conservation Society to continue treatment in this area that didn't have anything to do with their NFF contract with us or the Forest Service. That's how high their involvement is in this project, and we're really grateful to them for that. This is the original treatment unit. You can see the kind of rectangles in the middle there. That's the 113 acre. And if you look to the south there at the bottom, you can see a ton of homes right there. So that's how, again, just highlighting how closely this is to the WUI. The green polygon all the way to the right there is the Finger Rock unit. So just the western edge of it. So these units are right next to each other. And the kind of shaded gray polygon is the furthest extent of the Bighorn fire. So that's how close it got, folks. Really, really close to the WUI.
John, you can also tell them that orange line is where they put the slurry down, so you can see where
Oh, yeah. Yep. This was taken in summer 2022. I'm hoping that Tony will tell us a little bit more about this. This cobblestone was a mess. Like, it happened, it started a couple months after I got here, or a couple months before I got here, actually, with the NFF. And from what I was told, the buffalo grass plants were huge. Most of them are waist high or even higher. So this is a really thick infestation, again, right next to these homes. This is after 2 treatments in cobblestone. The slides on the left, the two on the more on the left, are all the way to the left was taken July of 2024. So just highlighting those back-to-back treatments that took place in 22, 23, and then 24. The middle one was also taken in July, and the one on the right was taken in March of 2023. So some great success in this unit. This actually in my mind, brings up another idea that we've started to do, which is post sort of treatment restoration. This is a good candidate for site-specific seed collection, revegetation of native plants in this area, because we want to do something with all this space that's been opened up now. And this is just that March 2023 photo again. Believe it or not, these are all the partners that have been involved in just these 2 projects alone, with the exception of Friends of Sabino Canyon, which has been integral in our projects in Sabino Canyon and Bear Canyon, $150,000 from Friends of Sabino Canyon. Everyone else has just been involved in these 2 projects at Finger Rock and Cobblestone. So I love this slide. It really does take a village, and we're super, super grateful for all the partners. Yeah, so we're going to jump into that panel discussion now. These are our 5 panelists. Jenny Davis, my wonderful colleague from the NFF, is going to be moderating. And we have Kim Franklin, Associate Director of Conservation from the Desert Museum. Kim and I have worked really closely on these projects over the last couple of years. Kim has been a huge help to me in the field, treatment planning. Her team has helped tremendously with GIS as well. Tony, me and Tony go way back. He is the Invasive Plant Program Senior Manager at TAS, and Tony is always there to answer any crazy, wild ideas I have through text, and his team has done a tremendous job, not only in Cobblestone, but also in Sabino Creek. And Chrissy, thank you so much for placing your trust in us to do these projects. Chrissy's been doing this a long time, way before I got onto the scene. Super grateful to all of the work that we get to do together. And Hannah, botanist for the Forest Service. Hannah has helped me out last spring with some field support that I needed and data management support, and I'm just really grateful that you're a part of this project as well. So Jenny, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Testing 1, 2. All right. Hi, everyone. We're going to ask our panelists a series of questions, and we'll save time at the end for questions from the audience. So if you have anything, write it down in those nice notebooks that we were provided, if you can't remember. And the questions are open to all panelists unless we ask someone specific. We'll go through questions about treatment, about the projects, and then move into questions about partnership, and at the last part, challenges and lessons learned. So we'll start off with Tony. Can you walk us through the beginnings of the cobblestone treatment, what you were up against, and how the treatment has progressed the last 2 years?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, the cobblestone site, as John alluded to, was crazy. The Tucson Audubon invasive plant program has been around for about 5 years now. We work a lot in the Tucson Mountains, the Catalinas, within the city. Cobblestone was a special place in terms of how infested it was and how tall and thick the plants were. We could barely see any of the ground in front of us when we were walking. I had buffalo grass plants that were chest high for most of the time. The first summer of 2022, we were working along with a crew from Arizona Wild as a subcontractor, and occasionally they would disappear, dropping down into a field of buffalo grass that was over our head height. So extreme infestation. We treated it thoroughly. We pride ourselves on native plant identification. So when we see our native plants, we're not spraying those. What's the benefit of doing invasive plant work if you're just killing everything? So we went in there, very specific, targeting buffalo grass, fountain grass, covered over 35 acres that first year. Had a heavy rainy season in the spring of 2023. I was like, oh man, did we just lose everything we were able to do this previous summer? Luckily, you saw in those pictures, there was a lot of death. There is some regrowth. So in the summer of 2023, we went back, combed through that previous treatment, spot sprayed any of the new buffalo grass or fountain grass that appeared, and then expanded our treatment. There's no silver bullet. You can't just treat a site 1 year and then walk away. You have to go back, get a good hit on the site for a return on your investment. Otherwise, it's just going to come back slowly. Buffalo grass has had a long time to fester in our area. It's not going to instantly reappear after a treatment. That's one of the things that people have in their head. Well, what's the point of doing it if it's just going to come back? It doesn't just instantly come back. It takes that return slowly coming back, but if you get out there and you spot spray it year after year, you can return that site to something that is more suitable Sonoran Desert instead of like what I like to call the Sonoran Getty, where it's just this African grassland within the Sonoran Desert creating this tinderbox. You saw in some of the photos that it was dead plants afterwards. People have raised the question, well, what about that? That's still flammable. Well, sure, but doing nothing, you still have that flammable grass year after year. After about 2 years, going back out there, those buffalo grass that were chest high have broken down where it's just single stems or culms from their inflorescence. You don't have all of the biomass of the leaves anymore. And now you have native plants returning, growing back through, and we're seeing desert tortoises, we're seeing snakes, we're seeing all these things that we had absolutely zero encounters the first year. It was mind-boggling how infested the site was. But you put in the work, you do it wisely, and you're going to see those results. But you got to come back and keep on chipping away, and you create a more resilient landscape. As you saw how close it was to the cobblestone community, they now have a fire break directly north of them. There's another community just to the east of them, Sinvacus. We were able to collaborate with them this year to find closer access to enter into the western edge of that unit. A lot of that's in the Push Ridge Wilderness, so it's all hiking in with backpack sprayers and then hiking back out to refill and do it again. It's hard work.
Like an absolute piece of cake. Easy project. Yeah. Kim, can you tell us more about the significance of aerial imagery that you've been working on and how that might inform new technologies in the fight against invasive grasses?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm with the Desert Museum, and some of you may know the Desert Museum. We have a small science team, and you might wonder why we're working with invasive species. They pose an existential threat. We keep talking about the grassification of the desert, the conversion of the desert to a grassland, so that's why we're involved. As John said, buffalo grass started to take off in the Tucson Basin in the 1990s. Buffalo grass loves slopes. That's where it does really well. And so it loves the WUI. It loves the foothills of the Santa Catalinas, the Rincon Mountains, and the Tucson Mountains that surround Tucson. And these, we call them the foothills. They are extremely rugged landscapes. It's hard to find anything less than a 30-degree slope in this landscape. So you can't really get on foot to move through that environment very easily. It's hard to map it on the ground. So since the 1990s, we have been trying to map it. Policymakers ask me, how much buffalo grass do you have, and how much is it going to cost to get rid of this? And we can't give them an answer because we don't know. And so we've been trying using different satellite-based sensors for about 20 years now to map buffalo grass. Some success, but not great success, and not with any sort of method that could easily be adopted by our land management community. These are academics who are doing this research. They have access to a lot of computing power and data storage space, and so the tools aren't there for our land managers yet, and it's impossible to do it on foot. So recently, I started working with a local company here that collects imagery, very high resolution imagery at a landscape scale. We had been really excited about drones. He has worked with drones too, the owner of this company, but what turns out to be a more effective way to collect imagery at a very high resolution, we're talking about 1 centimeter ground resolution, is with a fixed wing aircraft, and you put your sensor, you mount it in the base of the aircraft, and you can fly thousands of acres in a single day as compared to a drone. And with that type of resolution, I can see the individual bufflegrass plants, and so we've been manually mapping bufflegrass lately. What the hope is, and it's already happening in other parts of the country and the world, is that eventually with enough training data that we'll be able to use machine learning methods to map it. And so that would take that somewhat labor-intensive part. When you compare it to mapping on the ground, mapping on the imagery is really not that labor-intensive, but ultimately that's the goal. And having this broad picture, the big picture, knowing how many acres of bufflegrass, where it's distributed across the landscape, would be huge. Chrissy could make decisions about where to treat based on priorities and costs, and say it would cost this much to treat this canyon versus this much to treat this canyon, et cetera. We also would be able to measure the efficacy of our treatments, which is very hard to do because the ruggedness of the landscape really cannot be understated. And so having that big picture, I think, could really be a game changer for us with the bufflegrass issue. I'm happy to talk more about mapping, and also there's a lot of other invasive grasses that are causing issues. This is a perennial. The invasive annuals, the mapping is a little bit different.
Thanks, Kim. I also get to play timekeeper, so we'll have this for all of you, but if one of you want to answer so we can keep time. Has the dialogue shifted as the fire risk posed from invasive grasses grows? Are invasive grasses widely seen as a part of the wildfire risk reduction work in your work?
Hello, you can call me Chrissy, don't call me Christina. I don't know that name. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so like John said, the bighorn really highlighted the bufflegrass for our community. It got really close to the Catalina foothills, and 80,000 people, I think, had to be evacuated because of the bighorn fire. And so we've always known in the Forest Service that with us, that it is a hazardous fuel, but we were able to use the bighorn fire. So that's one positive thing from that bighorn fire, to use that to show the importance of treating that WUI with the surrounding communities. So like the Cobblestone community is a gated community. We couldn't get in there before. We had somebody from that community reach out to us, so it was really great to have that. But we do, I think, funding now, we can use our hazardous fuels funding, because there was never earmarked funding for our invasives, and there's still not, but we try to get that hazardous fuels funding to do any treatments if we can't get special funding like the Joint Chiefs funding that we have right now. So crossing our fingers, we still get some.
Yeah, I would like to emphasize that I do think that people are recognizing right now, since 2020, we had the bighorn fire in the Tucson Basin. There were the bush fire, one of the biggest fires in Arizona took place in the Tonto Basin, and many other fires the same year. So it was an enormous year for fire. We have bufflegrass. It's a perennial. It's always present on the landscape. In Maricopa County, Pinal County, they have a bigger problem with invasive annual grasses. Those create a carpet of fuel in, say, one season, right? So bufflegrass is spreading a little relatively slowly in comparison to those invasive annuals. And those explosive fire seasons are really what lead the state legislature to pay attention to the issue. And so fire is very helpful. People forget about it quickly, so you need to be prepared to take action when those kind of opportunities arise. But yeah.
Thanks, y'all. We'll dive into some questions about partnership and collaboration and why they're important for this work. Chrissy, this one's for you. Can you tell us some of the history of your work with invasives in the Catalinas and how partnerships have helped to achieve your treatment goals?
All right, a little bit of background is we had a forest ecologist that was mainly working on invasives for the whole entire forest. And then she retired in the middle of 2015. And 90% of that workload came to me because our district, the Santa Catalina Ranger District, has that much of the invasives, especially the buffalo grass. So I'm a rangeland management specialist, so I work with permittees that graze on, on the landscape, and now also I had like another full-time job taking on invasives. So it was just really difficult for me to do both jobs, but I was doing it the best I can, right? So that was a huge challenge for me. And and I think in 2016 was the first time I got a chance to work with the National Forest Foundation because they did a invasive weed pull, mainly buffalo grass, with Tucson electric power. And so I met Rebecca Davidson at the time, and slowly that relationship turned into what we have now. Desert Museum's always been there for me, trying to help me, not completely lose my sanity over this, but it's so hard. So I thank you, Kim, for trying to keep me straight. I'm just letting you know. And so, but it's been really difficult for me. And the person before me started out with these little, like 40-acre treatment in like Romero Canyon, 50 acres in like Finger Rock, and so since I've been here, I've been able to kind of wrangle money as I can. A lot of it's been hazard fuels. A lot of it's leftover hazard fuels money. At the end of the year, hey, do you have a project? Give me all your money. I could do whatever I can with it. And so we've gone to doing maybe a couple hundred acres a year to going either between 1,500 and 3,000 acres, because we have the two growing seasons, as John mentioned. We have the spring growing season and we have the monsoon growing season. And so we're gonna have that seed crop from both of those. So it's really important for us to hit that, because when we lose that, it's another 3 to 5 years of continued treatment, because that's how long those seeds are still viable in the soil. And so, is there anything, am I missing anything on there? I can just talk. Okay. Oh, right here, okay. Oh, and so yes, but going back to the partnerships, I am so incredibly grateful for them, because with Tucson Audubon, Desert Museum, and National Forest Foundation, I wouldn't be able to accomplish what we've got done today. And we've got some great momentum. We've made great strides, and we see so much effectiveness on the ground right now. And I'm glad John's gotten some gray hair besides myself. It says, buffalo grass green up is like an avocado. Is it ready? Is it ready? Too late. And so everybody's like, why did you call it? And so John, I'm like, thank you for taking that on, because it's so hard to do that. And so he's driven him crazy now, because I've got so many other things to do. So I do think that that's been a huge part, because the challenges that I had, besides being one person, is the contracting, the hiring of the contractors, managing the contractors, looking for green up, like I just talked about, them being an avocado, and then seeing the effectiveness. So I had all this on my plate, and I didn't have the capacity to do a bare minimum of what I had to do. So they've really taken on a lot for me, and I really do appreciate that. So these partnerships, I just couldn't do it without them.
Thanks, Chrissy.
I'd say another one of the benefits of that partnership is we're a nonprofit organization, so people will listen to our message in a different way than they're going to listen to the Forest Service or to Pima County. And we are able to take the success stories of what we're doing at this scale and say it to a captive audience that's listening to us in a way that they're not listening to government. And we can show them the success. We can talk through the practice of how they could also manage their lands, and they're seeing that it's not just an HOA or a homeowner problem. Well, what's the government doing? It's like, well, this is what they're doing. Here's an example. You want to be part of the solution, this is how you can do it. So having that broad partnership allows more voices to amplify that message out to the community and get more action.
No, he's absolutely correct. My joke is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help, and that they just don't want that. So having these, people get the Desert Museum and Tucson Audubon, and even going there and sharing their science and their knowledge, they're definitely going to listen to them than me. I think I'm pretty cool, but work for the government, so yeah.
Thank you both. Yeah, thanks for that point, Tony. Great, yeah, point there. This one's for Hannah. As a botanist for the Coronado, where do you see needs for new treatments in other areas of the forest, and how can partnerships help you achieve those goals?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Hannah. I'm the forest botanist for the Coronado. I'm based out of the supervisor's office. So as the forest botanist, I'm kind of in charge of managing the whole botany program across the forest. And if you're not familiar with the Coronado, it's like pretty large. It covers most of the Sky Islands in this southeast Arizona region. And so for me, I know and recognize the huge issues with buffalo grass in the WUI and the Catalinas, and that's where I would say like the majority of our invasive species treatment efforts lie because of the importance of the WUI. But I also manage like rare plant species and just like making sure the ecosystems in other parts of the Sky Islands are also intact and thriving. And there's obviously invasive species issues in other parts of the forest. And, you know, there's certain species like yellow blue stem that are a big issue. There are other species that we kind of have accepted. They've been a little bit more naturalized, like layman's lovegrass, that we can't do that much about at this point. But yeah, there's definitely more high priority species that I have my eye on in certain places. Particularly for me, I'm looking at like the Huachucas and also the two Macacaries. And we have some border restoration projects that we're trying to implement soon. And so for me, I'm pretty concerned about invasive species infiltrating the border region with just all the construction that's started and stopped and started over the past like handful of years. It's a huge vector for these invasives to move. So yeah, we have restoration projects that are happening around the container border wall that was put in, if you guys are familiar with all that stuff that happened a couple years ago, down on the border near Sierra Vista. And yeah, so those are the types of areas that I'm currently focused on treating. And then how partnerships can help. I would say it's honestly probably like the main way in which we're able to get that work done. I don't know if you guys are also familiar with like just kind of the state of where the Forest Service is at currently in terms of budget and shortfalls with resources and personnel. There's going to be like a huge reduction in the type of work that we can do based on just not having enough money for folks and projects. So a lot of that effort and help is going to come through partnerships, and I really don't know how we would get a lot of that done without the local organizations here like Tucson Audubon and NFF and yeah, some other groups, but super important, especially just the next couple years as we like work through this big budget shortcoming that we have.
And just to add on to that, currently I'm working with the recreation person on the Nogales district in Madera Canyon and the Friends of Madera Canyon and some volunteers, and I've brought John on from the National Forest Foundation to try to seek funding. They have yellow blue stem there, and they've got 4 acres, and you know, I think the ones that may know how special Madera Canyon is, we're trying to get that because you know, yellow blue stem is the next worst thing besides the buffalo grass that we're dealing with. So that is one of the projects that's going to be coming up.
Thanks, y'all. This one's for everyone. Given that much of this work happens in the WUI, what is important about interacting with neighboring communities and organizations?
So Tucson Audubon has actually started working with Pima County and the Sonoran Institute on WUI projects in Tucson, in the northern portion of Tucson, abutting the Catalina forest lands. So we're working with the Department of Forestry and Fire Management, funded under their grants, to do work in the communities, the HOAs, doing outreach, doing roadside treatments of vegetation, drainages that are coming off of the Catalinas, because we hear that messaging so much. Why should I do anything when I see a problem over there, when I see a problem in the easement? Well, now we can say the Department of Forestry and Fire Management has stepped up to this, along with Pima County and along with some other nonprofit organizations, to address some of those problems. We're gonna do this part. If you do a little bit more as your HOA and you come back to us and tell us, hey, We've started contracting people to do buffalo grass and fountain grass remediation within our community. Can you address the wash that's running through our property? You got it. We're going to get on it. So it's building that network of communities, agencies, nonprofit organizations to spread the message that you're not in it alone. We're all working together. The more you collaborate with us, the more you're going to get back out of it.
John, don't want to forget about you back there. Did I see you reach for the mic?
Sorry, thank you. And I'm sitting back here because I was, the projector was in my eye. So anyway, yeah, I think it's just important to highlight that, like, you know, these communities have not reached that Firewise aspect yet. They're not there. We're not there with them yet, and we need to get there because this is, as I mentioned, we really are heading in. These are fuels reduction projects, and there's so many homes along the foothills that have buffalo grass all around them, and so getting to a point, the conversation with the HOAs, moving it forward is critical, and we really do need at this point for those communities to be Firewise, and they're not there yet.
Thanks, y'all. We'll move into challenges and lessons learned. I think this is one of my favorite questions that we. What's the biggest challenge or worst case scenario you see moving forward with buffalo grass treatment? What is it that keeps you up at night? And how might collaboration and partnership support you in that? Yeah.
For me, it's there's so many things, but funding, because of, you know, our budgets, and like I said, there's not really earmarked money for invasives, but we do get some hazardous fuel money when we don't have these special funding sources like the Joint Chiefs, and so it's always a struggle to get in. And we were fortunate enough to put 1.2 million in agreements last year, and but that's not going to be something that we can continue to do. So I think for me, and having these partners and being able to work really well with John too, because we'll talk and we have like the same brainwave, like going back and forth. And so I'm like, oh, great. So we're thinking of the same thing. So it's just finding more funding and figuring out new ways to bring that funding in.
Yeah, I totally agree. One of the things that keeps me up at night is the funding as well. It's getting, like as I mentioned before, it's getting more and more expensive. Contractors are no longer charging for a cost per acre. That cost structure doesn't really make that much sense anyway, because there's so many things that go into the treatment itself. And so what we're seeing more is contractors just doing a cost per day for all of the crew, for all the chemicals, for all of the mobilization that goes into it, which is good and which is smart and which is exactly what they should be doing, because as I mentioned several times, everyone else does too, that this work is really difficult and the pay should sort of reflect that. So I would say that that's a big piece of it. You know, just speaking from a place of like, I guess, conservation, ethics, philosophy, you know, like the thing that keeps me up the most at night is that the subsequent generations are not going to see the beauty of the desert for what we know it is today. We all know that this is a remarkable place, a remarkable bioregion, and losing that scares the shit out of me, no question about it. So that's the thing that keeps me up at night the most.
Just to finish on this topic, if you heard Tom Torres, our state forester, speak yesterday and about the invasives problem, he went to Hawaii after the Lahaina fire, and he said, didn't look that different than here. And so that's something that and we've spoken with policymakers or decision makers at the county and state level, and that's something that definitely keeps them up at night, and I think that's something that really motivates them to take action.
Buffalo grass was there. That's what was there.
Yep, the Lahaina fire was driven by invasive grasses. And buffalo grass.
Buffalo grass, yeah.
Buffalo grass.
Not friendly.
So one of the challenges is the perception that people have about treatment, and it's going to be about the use of herbicide, and trying to paint the picture to people that this is work that's occurring out in the natural landscape and showing how effective it is, and trying to convince them that this is not the same as spraying all of your food commodities with glyphosate, as we all consume tons of food that is sprayed with glyphosate. It's a different situation. People have such a triggered reaction when they hear, oh, you're spraying glyphosate. I've seen all sorts of issues with that. And it's like, yes, there is a big agriculture problem with the use of glyphosate. This is different. This is using the best tool for this problem in an effective way. You're using a chemical, prepare yourself. All of our crews are certified applicators. We are trained. We are wearing proper PPE. We know how to clean ourselves. There's plenty of application that is done very poorly, and that's what gets the work a bad reputation. It is a necessary tool. If you do nothing and the whole hillside burns, that smoke and hazard is going to be far more dangerous than the glyphosate that we sprayed out there. The lasting impacts on the landscape is negligible. It breaks down very quick compared to a lot more powerful herbicides that we would probably have to go to if there was a ban put on glyphosate. So trying to paint that picture or come up with different strategies or approaches is one of the things that we've been working on. One of the new techniques that we've implemented, especially in some of these WUI areas where you have more foot traffic, you have higher human occupancy, but you might have access to using something like a line trimmer or a weed whacker. You have stands of buffalo grass that are just 4 to 8 feet thick off of the roadside, and then it tapers off as you get into the natural desert. People just ignore it. They're like, oh, it's too much. I'm not going to do anything. That's what keeps me up at night, is that laziness of, I'm not going to do anything. It's an impossible problem. Use some ecological principles. Pretend like you're an herbivore. Cut it down with a line trimmer. You know, cut it down so that it's 4 inches, 3 inches tall, instead of 4 feet tall. Come back in a week. Come back in 2 weeks when it has vigorous regrowth, and then spray it. You're using 10% of the chemical that you would use to spray that plant that was 4 feet high. That's a lot easier message to get across to an HOA than saying, oh, we're going to come in here and we're going to spray all of your plants that are 4 feet high, and then it's going to look like shit out here for the next 3 years as they break down. That's not what they want to hear. You need to give them something that's aesthetically pleasing and an approach that's effective. Just cutting it is not going to do anything. Cut and spray is going to save you so much time in the long run and make it pleasing to the community.
Thank you all.
One more thing, just to say, I'm not sure how many of you know what glyphosate is. It's Roundup. Just so you know, because I wasn't sure.
Thanks, Al. Thanks for sharing why we're so tired all the time. Gotta run through these last two pretty quick. This one's also for everyone. What really stands out in your mind in the last few years of these projects, and are there any lessons learned that the audience could benefit from hearing about?
I don't want to go first again. Go ahead.
I could talk forever. The success is attainable. We've been working in sites that are 80 acres, 100 acres, 20 acres. And when you have trained crews and you go and you spray when the phenology is correct, when you have that new green up occurring and you follow it up the next growing season to hit the onesies and twosies that come back, you can have a ton of success in treating an area that has just festered for decades. And people said, it's impossible. We can't do anything there. We did it. You know, it takes a lot of time and effort. It's hard, but you can get stuff done.
Yeah, I would just say that just echoing Tony, like there were a lot of people, respected ecologists, people in the community who thought we were crazy for trying to go after buffalo grass and the Catalinas, and we are really making a change, and it comes from, it really does come from the working together as a team. You know, the largest infestation in Pima County of buffalo grass has to be the Coronado. It's just because it's the big land, it's the biggest land management agency. So, and the biggest land. So I think that, yeah, it is possible. This last year to me was like, you saw the pictures of Cobblestone, you saw the pictures of Finger Rock. This last year to me was like a really big year, and like, now we have a story to tell. It is possible if we work together as a team.
Anybody else really quick? Okay. Last one, and each of you can answer this if you would like. What is one thing you are really proud of in this scope of work?
The first year at Cobblestone, all we saw was buffalo grass. Never a rattlesnake, never a tortoise. The next year when we were back out there, it was a tortoise every single day. Coach whips every single day. Rattlesnakes every single day. My crew, we enjoy seeing rattlesnakes. It's one of the good friends of our desert. But bighorn sheep in an area that was, I hated that site in 2022. It was miserable. It sucked. That year it was super hot, super high buffalo grass, and you thought you were gonna die every day just falling into a black hole. The next year, all of that grass was broken down. You could actually see where you were walking. You could see that the creatures had returned. You could see native plants regrowing in it. That's what just fills my bucket and like makes me reassured what we're doing is effective. We can tell that message, we can amplify it, we can show other contractors, other people, you could do this too. You could see there's money in it. Figure it out, get to work. Like, we can raise all ships and get more people out here and get more effective work done when the whole community is aware of what is occurring out there and they can see the success. They can see the pictures. They can see the return of the native stuff. But we got to tell the story.
This is not my own accomplishment. I'm not proud of this, but I'm proud of our community for this, and that Tucson has the most amazing people in that they are willing to go out and dig up buffalo grass year round. And so there are hundreds of people, mostly in their 60s, 70s, even older than that, who go out twice a month and dig up buffalo grass, and that is one reason that the Tucson mountains, in particular, where buffalo grass is a little easier to control, are free of buffalo grass. And you can take a drive through the densest stands of saguaros in the world. We call them saguaro forests. And so just the ethic of the Tucson community and how much they care for the landscape is something that I'm proud to be part of.
Super proud of the people sitting here. You guys have been such a pleasure to work with, and yeah, I'm like blown away by your determination, as we work on this together. You guys have been doing it longer than I've been in this position, but just seeing, it's not the most optimistic work, and you guys are still out there, and it really, it is really cool to see. And honestly, also the contractors too. The work is extremely burly. I can't even believe some of the stuff they have to do in the middle of the summertime. Like, it's truly incredible and harrowing to think about. But yeah, the fact that you guys and those contractors are out there it makes me really proud to be part of.
Yeah, Hannah stole my thunder because I was going to say these people also, but no. But I am still going to say it. No, but really, like I said before, I was by myself trying to do it all and probably not doing that great, but doing the best I could, with being so spread thin with the two jobs. And bringing, Kim on to help, and then, the National Forest Foundation. I truly am proud of what we've done and where we've come and how far we've come and the successes we've been having. And so I continue to hopefully be able to work with these guys and continue to do more good stuff out there and really show the effectiveness that we've done. So that's what I have.
Thank you all. Anyone else? John?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to all the panelists so much for being here. It really is a dream to work with these folks, and Hannah mentioned the contractors as well. The contractors who do this work are badasses. They are so cool. They are so tough, and the determination that they give to these projects is incredible. So they're my heroes, and that's something I'm really proud of as well. Do we want to open it up to audience questions now, Jenny?
Yeah, I was going to say round of applause for panelists. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate that. Yeah, and we'll open up to audience questions. I saw it first, Sally.
Hi, Sally Crum from Mount Lemon. We have a problem with cheatgrass, but we've tried to attack it as a community, and we're not having a lot of success. We've gotten where we've told homeowners to do what they can to keep it away from the cabin. But is there any plans or projects or resources that would be available to help us out up there? It's also like an avocado.
Yeah.
It grows early, it dies early, so it's dry all during the summer. And there's a very specific time when you can get it where the seeds aren't dropping. We're pretty much, I don't know what to tell my homeowners, so.
And you're particularly talking about Summer Haven itself, right? Okay, so does anybody want to talk about, I don't know, as partner groups on how they could help or any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, it's a different type of treatment. So the volunteer effort, the community effort that we have in Tucson is people who are manually removing buffalo grass. Oh, you're doing manual. Yes, you are welcome to post your events on the Desert Museum hosts a website to bring people together. And, we would be happy to help advertise those events through our social media accounts and all sorts of things like that. Yeah, it's definitely those annuals are a nightmare.
I just want to say that your passion for your work is palpable and inspiring, so thank you so much. The Sonoran Desert is my home, although I don't live here anymore. I live in the northern part of the state, but it's near, your work is near and dear to me, so thank you so much. So I work with the Good Neighbor Authority program at DFFM, and we are very interested in putting our heads together with you and seeing if there's a space for Good Neighbor Authority. We do have an agreement, a Coronado forest-wide agreement already in place that we could just jump into if we determine that that's the right mechanism. It only works on non-wilderness lands, though. But if there is that space, I would love to connect with you about that. And then another piece, I'm all about the money, so I would love to hear a breakdown of how much, where that $1,200 an acre comes from. I don't know if today is the right time for that, but perhaps another time to see if we can find some cost savings. I don't know, but.
Be happy to talk to you. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk to you for sure.
Okay, cool. And I think that's it for me.
So the cost of this is about, what, $1,200 per acre, and you said you're using glyphosate, and I know that you also said that native plants were a concern. Did you explore aerial applications and reestablishing native plants post-treatment as possibly a more affordable alternative, since the woody natives are unlikely to be affected? Saguaro National Park has shown that the cactus species are relatively unaffected. Was that something you guys explored?
Yep, that's one of my dreams right there. But we need to do the NEPA for that, and how that is with budget constraints and manpower and trying to get all that together. So Hannah, hey, let's go ahead and do the NEPA for the, But yes, I think aerial is definitely in some of these places essential, especially because we cannot get people to those, the slopes, and you've seen, hopefully, I think some of you knows what it looks like for the Catalinas, but it's really hard. And I say these contractors are the closest thing to mountain goats I've ever seen, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't want to know how you got there. Don't tell me how you did that. So, but we definitely need that because all that seed bank is up there and it's just coming down. So we're treating this Band-Aid here, but if we don't get the stuff that's up higher, then we're not going to fully be successful as we'd like to be. But yep, it's on our list of things to do.
One other challenge to that is trying to find somebody who can do aerial applications. Saguaro National Park has done it, but there's one guy who will fly a helicopter, and he's based out of Florida. So trying to get the equipment here in the time of that avocado being ripe for the picking is another challenge of like trying to use those aerial applications. So that's one of the benefits of the ground crews, but drone applications and things like that, that's the future. Like that's what's necessary for a lot of the cliff faces that you cannot hike up to or rappel to, and it will always be a point source for an infestation. So that technology and partnership, that's the next dream that we have, is drone usage in some of those areas, but takes time and collaboration.
Yeah, I think they are starting to use drones in the Sonoran Desert. City of Apache Junction used drones to treat buffalo grass, and we're going to do a pilot project on a place called Tuamac Hill with drones, which is a good start. Mm-hmm.
Any other audience questions? You guys are letting us off easy. All right, well, we're at time. You're free to go. Thank you all so much for attending.